Well, good morning, church. It's good to be here this morning. And I want to ask you a question. Are you glad that you're part of the family of God? Excellent, excellent. And I want you to turn to the person. I'm following a bit of a text lead. I want you to turn to the person beside you. Look them in the eye. Don't linger too long, remember. We don't want to get too romantic here. But I want you to turn to the person beside you, look them in the eye and say, you are part of an amazing family. Yeah? Go, let's do it. You are part of an amazing family. You know, it is so true. It is good to be here at Big Camp. Is that right? It is good to be here at Big Camp. And what I want to do is I want you to think not only of your church family, but let's see if we can get this going here. The pen, we've lost the pen. So, let me write it down for you. Otherwise, I'll tell everybody my pen. I'll announce it. So, I'm pretty sure that's it. Writing down is different from typing. Okay, so until we get this going, I just want you to think of your own family, not just your church family, but your own family, your mum, your dad, your brothers and sisters, your cousins, your uncles, your aunts, all of those people. Can you think of them? Just picture them. Picture maybe a Christmas dinner or something like that. Is that a good picture or a bad picture, you know? But I guess my question for you today is this. Are they a picture-perfect New Zealand family? You know one of those studio shots, you know, where you have the kind of backlighting, the screen just out there, you know, just everything culturally exactly in place. All of the things exactly right. Is that your kind of family? You know, where no matter if you're Māori or you're Samoan, it's beautiful. It's exactly right. Is that your family? Or does your family have some flaws and faults? You know, is it more of a kind of dynamic, kind of fiery kind of time where, you know, there's not only flaws and faults, but your family has some dark shadows in your family. Is that more like your family? Is there some imperfections? Are there things in your closets? You know, that typical skeleton in your closet. Is that what your family is like? And not only that, are there some painful memories and photographs, images in your family album that you go like, man, I love my family, but they're still there. Those pictures, those images, those memories are still there. And the reality is that families have been like this for centuries, right? It's not only now. It's been like this for centuries. And to discover this, I want to take you back in time, a long way back in time, to a very, very significant and fascinating place, a flourishing city at that time. In fact, one of the most significant cities in that period of history. You know, it was something like the Auckland or Wellington of that period, or maybe if you want to look a bit broader than that, maybe the Sydney, Melbourne, or even New York of that time. I mean, this was a big city. This was massive, and this was a place where if you wanted to go to find a job, you would go there. If you wanted to go to network, you'd go there. If you wanted business connections, if you wanted inspiration, if you wanted to go for a trip, you would go there. This is that kind of city. And in this city, there was a little boy that was growing up. And often we think, you know, we go back in time and we think people were so different from us. Well, no, they weren't. They were just like us. Is that right? They were exactly like us. And in this city, there was a little boy. And this little boy, he loved just running up and down the streets, just like little boys today. Is that right? Loved chasing his friends, in particular chasing his sisters, teasing them, just like any little boy. He would love to go down to the market. A bit like our shopping centres of today. He'd love to go down to the market, take some of the money that his parents had given him to buy him some sweets, some lollies down at the market and to be able to enjoy them. With regards to teasing his sisters, he would tease them to the point that they'd get upset. They'd get angry. Typical little boy. And as parents would at that point in time, they'd say, "Man, you are just a little terror. You're just a little terror." And he would think to himself, I guess he didn't speak English, but he'd think to himself, "A little terror, is that why they called me terror? Is that why they called me terror?" And I'm sure his parents would just laugh. His parents would just laugh. The interesting thing is this is how we're introduced to terror in the Bible. This little boy called Terah. And here we have it, here. This is the account of Terah's family. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran was the father of Lot. But Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living. Meanwhile, Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Iscah were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran. But Sarai was unable to become pregnant and had no children. Here is how we are introduced to Terah, little Terah's family. Little Terah's family. And not only are we introduced to Terah, but we are introduced to his incredibly famous son, Abram, right? This is the very first time we meet Abram. The fact is this, is that when we're introduced to Abram, we actually know nothing about Abram himself. Is that right? Nothing at all. We don't know his personality. We don't know his likes, his dislikes. We don't know what foods he liked best, where he liked to go shopping. We don't know what sports he liked to play. Nothing at all. All we are introduced to is Abram's family, right? That is what we're introduced to, Abram's family. And I ask you this question. You look up there and you just read through it. Was this a picture-perfect family? Yes or no? Was it a picture-perfect family? Well, you just start to read into it. So Terah was the father of these three boys, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So 3 sons, great. And we move on. Haran was the father of Lot. But in the next very moment, we find out that Haran died young. He died young. He had his son Lot, and then he died. A death in the family, a young death. This is grief, right? This is suffering. This is pain right in this family. Here in this great city of Ur, this incredible city of Ur, going back way beyond Babylon. This is the place to be. You keep on going. So you hear about Haran. Haran died, leaving effectively kind of an orphan in the family. You go on. Abram and Nahor married. Well, that's a very obvious thing to do, very, very natural thing to do. Many of you married right here. But you need to know, well, what was their marriage? What was their marriage? Abram married Sarai. Well, that sounds great, but who was Sarai? Sarai was Abram's stepsister, correct? Half-sister, right? So what happened here is what this tells us, we learn from later in the Bible, is that Terah had more than one wife, right? He had more than one wife. So here, Abram's marrying his half-sister. Not only that, we find that Nahor's wife was Milcah. Well, who's Milcah? It tells us in the text. Milcah was the daughter of Haran. So effectively, Nahor, the uncle, is marrying his niece, correct? Does this sound incestuous to you? Now, I know you might say, well, we go back to the ancient Near Eastern cultures and, it was practiced back then. But the reality was, even if it was culturally acceptable, genetically, it was incestuous. Genetically, there was problems, there was challenges. And we even see kind of a hint of this in this very text because it goes on to say Sarai was unable to become pregnant and had no children. What does this tell us? In this age in which we live, the great dream that we have, and I feel that dream myself, is this: romance and intimacy. To find your true love is the greatest thing. Back there was different. Back there was, marriage was part of culture, but the great dream was to have a son, right? To have children. And for somebody like Sarai to not have children effectively meant that you weren't living the dream. You weren't blessed by God. This was a very, very mixed up family. The pain in that family. But I want to ask you this question. As you look up at that screen, as you read about Terah, as you read about Abram, I want to ask you this. What's your family like? What's your family like? Is your family a blended family? Where you have husbands and wives and it's blended. You know what I'm talking about? Stepsons, stepsisters, all of that kind of thing. Is that part of your family? Have there ever been any affairs in your family? Is that part of your family history? Is there a photograph in your family album where there's actual affair and you know that that's occurring? You knew that happened. And let's get down to something that's closer to home. Does anybody in your family have any mental health challenges or issues? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? That the reality of the life in which we live, and I'm being serious here, and I'm being very, very personal. The questions I'm asking is not just theoretical, it's not just rhetorical questions, but in terms of mental health, did it ever lead anybody to take their own life? Yes or no? Have you ever had that pain of saying goodbye to someone who took their own life? Was there anybody ever abused in your family? Have you suffered that? The reality is this: ordinary families in ordinary lives, very messed up. Is that us? Is that where we are as well, my friends? I'm just being honest with you. And if I had the chance to sit down and talk with you, I could share so much more about my own family. Things that I'd go like, my family's amazing. I mean, you heard when I talked to you with Adrian, I got my parents here, my sister, but if I go to my family, the reality is that we're not the picture-perfect New Zealand family that we wished we were. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But there's another thing. It goes even deeper than this. There's another thing that you need to know about Terah's family. And we don't read it here, but we read it later on in Joshua's testimony. And it comes here. Joshua, so this is at the end when they're in the promised land. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, that little boy, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River, and they worshipped other gods." Man, they worshipped other gods. What is it saying? He was in a family where they worshipped idols. They worshipped idols. And in Patriarchs and Prophets, it fills out the picture a little bit. Abraham had grown up in the midst of superstition and heathenism. Even in his father's household, by whom the knowledge of God had been preserved, were yielding to the seductive influences surrounding them, and they served other gods than Jehovah. Ur of the Chaldeans was a place known for idols. Idol worship. And how do I know? Because when you walk down the main street, just like driving into Auckland, right? Or driving into Wellington or Palmerston North, wherever you're from, Main Street, what would you see? What you see? A huge building called a ziggurat. This was like a pyramid temple to the moon god. To the moon god. You'd go here, and when you look up at this temple, this place was busy. This place was busy with priests, hurrying up and down those stairs, accepting offerings and animal sacrifices. That they were hurrying to the rituals in their program, in their religious schedule. This was a spiritually dark place, my friends. This was a spiritually dark place. Was not the picture-perfect kind of place that we sometimes think it might be. This was an idolatrous place. This was an idolatrous place. And we look back and we think, man, isn't that terrible? Isn't that terrible? We never get involved in idolatry today. Is that right? We never get involved in idolatry. I grew up in Hong Kong. And to add a little bit more flavor into my background. And I grew up in Hong Kong, and my parents worked at one of the Adventist hospitals there. And very close nearby was a Buddhist temple, And we would go there because one of the beautiful things about Buddhism is their vegetarian food. It's incredible. And so we'd go there, we'd go to the restaurant in the Buddhist temple, and we would enjoy it. We'd go around just enjoying the kind of culture. I remember going with a friend of mine on a mission trip that I organized to a university in China. And because we were going there, I thought, hey, I want to give these Australians and New Zealanders a little bit of a cultural taste. And so what we did is I took them to an island called Putoi Shan. You don't have to remember that. But in Putoi Shan, there was a Buddhist temple. I thought this would be great for them to experience. And so I took them there, and my friend Justin, good friend Justin, came along as well. And he walked through the door, and there were these incredible Buddhist statues, huge, massive gold statues. If any of you have been to Asia, you'll know what I'm talking about. Incredible statues, but they're not just there as decoration, right? People actually come there. You'll see down the front, you'll see these little bowls of oranges and rice, and people with their incense sticks and praying to the Buddha for luck and fortune, right? I'm telling you. And my Australian Adventist friend, he was like, incense is righteous indignation. He said, we need to smash all the idols. And I said, no, stop. I know where you're coming from, but we need to stop. But the reality is, friends, idolatry is still part of the human life, part of the human nature. Is that right? It's interesting to say, to know that John Calvin, the reformer, the great reformer, he said this thing: the human heart is an idol factory. What does this mean? This means that in our hearts generate idols very, very easily. It's the natural flow of our hearts. This is where we want to go. And if you just think, well, John Calvin, he's Calvinistic, he's sort of Presbyterian kind of thing, and whatever. Let's go to the Bible. The Bible says this: Son of man. Talking to Ezekiel, Son of man, these leaders have set up idols in their hearts. Set up idols in their hearts is not just big golden Buddhas. No, it's the fact is that we set up idols inside our hearts. And I ask you, is New Zealand, and I'm from New Zealand, so there's no condemnation here. Is there any idolatry here in New Zealand? Yes or no? Can money be an idol? Can sex be an idol? What about sports? I mean, All Blacks. I support the All Blacks, but can it be an idol? What about careers? What about family traditions? What about cultural practices? Can these be idols? Yes or no? And what about, notice here it says these leaders, these are Israelite leaders, these are God's people. These Israelite leaders have set up idols in their hearts. Is it possible, my friends, inside the church for us to set up idols? Yes or no? In our hearts. Is it right? Is it possible for us to say, the head elder position, wow, that gives me value. It makes me somebody. And I need to hang on to that position. I need to demonstrate that I have the authority. Do you know what I'm saying? What about the treasurer role? I manage the money. Whether it's at the conference or the local church or union or SBD, is it possible that we have these idols? Or church clerk role? Or, can we have these idols in terms of our ideas? I'm right. And I have to be right, and I have to prove it to everybody. Is it possible that we've set up idols in our hearts? a spiritually dark place. But I want to tell you, my friends, God is on the move. Is that right? God is on the move. In places where there are messed up families, in the places where it's incestuous, there's affairs, where there's all kind of sexual, deviances, where there's people worshiping positions and possessions and consumeristic and all of those kind of things. God is on the move and he's looking for people like you and me. Is that right? Because this is what God says. God is on the move in in this great city of this dark city. And what does God do? God comes and says, leave your native country, your relatives and your father's family and go to the land that I will show you. Is that right? He comes, he finds Abram in this city. And what does he say? He says, I don't want you to identify with your culture, with your society, with your family, all of those kind of things. I want you to identify yourself with me. I want you to connect with me and go with me. I've already gone ahead. I've sussed out this land. I know what it's like. I want you to come with me. I want you to come with me. Amazing. And the incredible thing is this, is that Abram's going like, what? Me? Just an ordinary person. Nothing special, nothing, not great superstar kind of person, but just ordinary Abram from a messed up family. God is saying, come, join me, follow me, go with me. Hear the call? Hear the call? And God is not saying, well, I just want you to come on a tour with me. I'm not just a cruise boat with me. God actually says, I will make you into a great nation and I will bless you. I will make your name great and you will be a blessing, my friends. Isn't that amazing? You right here, you can be a blessing. You can be a blessing to others, to demonstrate to them what God can do. It's an amazing reality. Amazing reality. And God goes on and he says, he's very honest with Abram. And he says to Abram this, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. He's saying, look, it's not always going to be a bed of roses. Not everybody that you meet is going to say, yes, Abram, come on in, fantastic. No, what he's saying is this, is that even though there might be challenges, some people accept, some people won't. But the fact is this, I will be there. I'm going ahead of you. Don't worry, I've sorted it out. And Jesus himself actually says this as well. Remember when he was talking to the disciples, he said, now go, same command. And remember that I am sending you out as lambs amongst wolves. Is that right? And the question is, my friends, do we need to be afraid? Yes or no? No. Why? Because God is with us. Because Jesus is with us. Because he is the one who has gone ahead of us. We are following him into the harvest. And then he goes and says this to Abram. He says this, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Isn't that incredible? And Abram's going to himself, how on earth? I just live in Whangarei. I just live in Gisborne. I just live in Napier. How can all peoples of earth be blessed through you? Through him. And God is saying, I will be able to do it. I will bless everything that you do. And what did Abram do? What was Abram's response? The Bible tells us, so Abram went as the Lord told him. So Abram went as the Lord told him. The only thing we know about Abram from this passage is his willingness to be obedient to God. His willingness to be obedient to God. The Bible doesn't say, okay, Abram, okay, can you show me the contract? Can you show me the conditions? Can you show me exactly what the deal is here? Can I get a better deal? Can I negotiate with you? No. The Bible simply says, so Abram went as the Lord had told him. Abraham obeyed. Abram obeyed. Abram trusted God and obeyed him. Abram went on a journey with God. Isn't that amazing? Abram went on a journey with God. Now, there's one thing which always really intrigues me about this story. Intrigues me about Abram, and that was this. Think about it carefully. How did Abram know that it was God talking to him? Have you ever thought about that? How did Abram know? Because imagine that you wake up in the morning here at Big Camp and you hear this voice. I want you to go to Blacktown in Sydney. Now just go. And you're thinking like, no way in the world, too much pizza last night from the cafe, too much pizza from the kitchen. It's, Sydney with the snakes, with the spiders, with the traffic, for those of you who live there, why would I want to go there? Well, I'm sure that this is not God's voice. But Abram hears a voice. Abraham hears a voice, and he responds to the voice. Why? Why is that? And the reality is this, as I've reflected on this, and it's not only true for this story as well, it's true for another major story, the story in Genesis chapter 20, 22. The fact is this, Abram had learned to recognize the voice of God. Is that right? Abram had learned to recognize the voice of God. God had become his friend. God had become his person that he could trust. And he got to the point when God said, leave your family, leave your country, and go, and I will show you the place where you're to go. Abraham was willing to go. And the New Testament says, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he's going. He had no idea. And this leads me to another point. God did not say, I want you to go to Sydney. He didn't say, I want you to go to Brisbane or the Gold Coast. He didn't say, go there. What did he say? Go and I will show you. What he's really saying is this, is not about the place. Even though I'm giving you a promised land, and we talked about that yesterday, it's not about the place. The critical thing is an ongoing walk with God, right? To be listening to him, to be hearing his voice. And friends, and this is so important, when we're talking about the harvest, when we're talking about the mission, when we're talking about God on the move, one of the most important things, church, and listen very, very carefully, Seventh-day Adventist Church, we need to learn to hear the voice of God. Is that right, my friends? We need to hear the voice of God. Why? Because if God is on the move and it's his mission and the battle belongs to the Lord and the victory belongs to the God, where do we need to be? With God. We need to be listening to God. We need to be following him closely. And my question is, how do you learn to listen to God? How do you learn to recognize God? The fact is this, is if I got my mobile phone out and a lady called me and she said, hey, Sven, how's it going down at Big Camp? I would know instantly it's my mum. I would know instantly if it was my sister. Why? Because I've learned to recognize the voice of God. Is that right? I know that person. I know that person, and I want to encourage you. We can learn to recognize the voice of God as we open the Bible, as we spend time with him. This is not just a textbook. We're learning to do tests at Avondale or university. No, this is a place to become familiar with the voice of God. And I want to encourage you as well. You can also learn to recognize the voice of God by listening and reading the Spirit of prophecy as well. The Spirit of prophecy is a gift from God to us. And it's where God is speaking to us. And we're not putting it above the Bible, but we're simply saying, I want to learn to hear the voice of God. I want to learn to hear the voice of God. But there's another thing too, friends. There's another thing too, and the Bible predicts it as well, is that as we come to the end of time, we'll reach a point in time where there's a group of people, a movement of people who are close to God and they're listening to him personally. Is that right? They're listening to him personally. And we see this in Scripture. We see David saying, be still and know that I'm God. Be still. And no, this is a relational, this is deep connection in the Hebrew. We go to Samuel, a few books later in the Bible, and Samuel doesn't know who's talking to him. Finally, he learns and he says, speak, your servant is listening. They heard the voice of God. They heard the voice of God. And even prophetically, in Isaiah, this person that went up into the throne room of God, he says, your own ears, not your pastors, not your conference president. I'm not putting them down because I'm a pastor as well. But it doesn't say, your ministerial secretary or your head elder. No, your own ears will hear him. Right behind you, a voice will say, this is the way you should go, whether to the right or to the left, my friends. Is that right? We need to listen to the voice of God. We need to grow in maturity to be able to listen to the voice of God. And what God did is, Abram did is he heard the word of the Lord. He heard the word of the Lord. And this is the trajectory, the pathway. Does it say that he went and found this beautiful land flowing with milk and honey and grapes and all that kind of thing? Does it say that he went down and the supermarket was filled, with New Zealand milk, New Zealand honey? Does it all say no? What does it say? So the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring, to your children, to your family, I will give you this land. And so what does Abram do? Abram does this. So he built an altar there to the Lord, my friends. He built an altar to the Lord, who appeared to him. From there he went on towards the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev. Abram continued towards the Negev. What was he doing? What was he doing? He was simply saying, wherever I go, I'm going to call people into the presence of God, to call upon the name of the Lord and learn to hear from him. Is that right? And I want you to compare this for a moment. From the great city of Ur where they had come from. The great city of Ur where he'd come from, compared to what he did. In the city of Ur was this incredible, impressive, eye-catching, inspiring ziggurats, with priests hurrying up and down, with sacrifices being made. This was amazing. This was where people would come on their holidays for. They would come to see this ziggurat. What did Abram do? Nothing like that. Just a small little altar, right? A small place. And what was he doing? It's not about just the place and the altar. It's about the God I'm calling you to connect with. Listen to him. Follow him. Go wherever he leads. I've learned this as well. It's interesting that when I went to Sydney, one of the things that I said to myself is I want to join another orchestra. So I've been part of a number of orchestras down through the years. And first orchestra I was part of was the Christchurch Youth Orchestra. And then from Christchurch Youth Orchestra, I joined Da Capo in Christchurch. Then when I went over to England, I joined the Prom Praise Orchestra. And that was the Prom Praise Orchestra. Every year they have a concert in the Royal Albert Hall, and they sing praises. I'm not sure if you've ever been in a situation where there's 5,000 Christians all singing hymns. Have you ever been in a situation like that? It is amazing. It's like heaven on earth. You're going like, this is what it's going to be with the angels. And I just get the humble opportunity to be up at the front on the stage playing my violin. And whether I'm sort of third or fourth or right at the back of the second, so I'm going like, I just bask in this reality. And so there I was, with London, part of the Prom Praise Orchestra, then over to Perth with the Perth Symphony Orchestra. And I get to Sydney and I'm going like, I want to join another orchestra. But the problem was this, as I worked out on the map, one thing with Sydney, as I mentioned before, was the traffic, right? The long commutes. And here we are right in Blacktown Council, and a little bit kind of out of Blacktown Council, and there's one orchestra, Ku-ring-gai Orchestra, 40 minutes that way. And one thing is that with orchestras is that you need to rehearse at night. So you start about 7:30, you normally end at about 10. So it meant that if I was in the Ku-ring-gai Orchestra, that I would be coming home at 11 o'clock at night And I was thinking like, man, I've got a young family, I've got a wife, every week doing this, it's just not fair for them. So I thought, okay, Ku-ring-gai orchestra is not going to work well. I'm going to look for the orchestra on the other side. And there, I thought, okay, there was a Penrith orchestra. But the problem with the Penrith orchestra is 40 minutes the other way. So Ku-ring-gai, I'm like stuck in the middle, piggy in the middle, with no orchestra, coming home late at night and, oh man, this is not going to work. So finally, one day my wife said to me, why don't you start your own orchestra? I go, what? That's just crazy. That's crazy. But then I thought, maybe this is a good opportunity. Maybe it's a good opportunity. So I contacted the local newspaper and I sent them, I said, would you like to write an article for me to be because I wanted to start an orchestra. Didn't hear anything from them. Didn't hear anything from them for like 2 weeks, and I thought, well, that was a bit of a dud. And suddenly I get a phone call. Hey, I'm the photographer, reporter from the newspaper. I'm coming tomorrow because I want to write an article about. Wow, man, I haven't done my, done my haircut. Haven't got all my clothes ironed, all that kind of thing. So I got it all ready, and we sat down, and they took this amazing photograph on me, and they wrote the article. It came up on the newspaper. So I said, look, I don't mind. I'm not trying to be ambitious here. I said I'd be happy with either a quartet, 4 of us, or an orchestra, 80. So I'm anywhere in between. I'm not trying to be too greedy here. And so next day in the newspaper was. And said, here we have a quartet which is 3/4 short. There's only one violinist. I thought, my goodness, how to pop the balloon, There's only one violinist. Oh, my goodness. But, I thought, oh, well, we'll see what happens. The other thing I should say to you as well is this, is that I thought, well, I'm going to be a little bit more courageous. Do we need to be more courageous as Seventh-day Adventists? Absolutely. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to use my Gmail account. I'm going to use my Adventist account. So with your signature, director of personal ministry, Sabbath school stewardship, discipleship, all of that kind of thing. And so the reporter never asked me about that. But then it comes right in the middle. Sven is a director of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm going like, oh my goodness, my cover's blown. My cover's blown. I'm going to go nowhere with this. The next day, somebody calls. Hey, I'm a flute player. I heard you wanted to start an orchestra. Can I join? This is incredible. Next day, a violinist. Next day, a cellist. And all of these people started to call. And finally, I had what ended up being this group here. Not 80-piece orchestra, right? But still, we had an incredible time. There was 6 of us who started the Pond String Ensemble. And it was an amazing experience. The very first day, when we had our rehearsal, we're trying to figure out where to rehearse, and we finally decided on the Adventist school there. The first day, in walked one of these ladies. I won't tell you which one, but she walked in and she said to me, Sven, groups like these they fall over very easily. I was going, what? That's just like, so discouraging right from the start. You're supposed to be upfront and positive. So I was going like, this is annoying. This is annoying. And as a person, she became the librarian. It was always like, Sven, you need to hand back your music. I was going like, I'm the leader here. You're the librarian. You're telling me to hand back my music? The music that I have, Then one day she came in and she said, Sven, is Donald Trump the beast in Revelation 13? And I thought to myself, well, it's a bit kind of twisted in terms of the biblical interpretation, but there's a seed there, is there not? There's a seed there. And so I said, hey, well, there's a lot more to this. And we started this journey, and I could tell that in amongst of the challenges and the things that she was sharing with me, there was a spiritual hunger there. And a couple of years later, unfortunately, her husband went into Sydney Adventist Hospital and he died. Not that Sydney Adventist Hospital kills people, but he died. He was an older person. And that was the moment I said, now I need to move. Now I need to move. And I said to her, would you like to come? I know that you're hurting right at the moment. But would you like to come over and my wife Marilyn and I will just read through the Gospel of John together? chapter by chapter. Would you like to do it? And she said, yes. She said yes. And that's what we did. That's what we did for weeks and weeks. Just one chapter. John chapter 1, John chapter 2, John chapter 3. And we went through it, and she was going like, I'm so amazed. I have such a hunger for truth. And what I find in the Gospel of John is truth. Gospel of John is truth. And you know, my wife contacted her, sent her an SMS recently, said, how you going? We thought maybe she's wandered away. She said, I'm there at my church, my Adventist church in Sydney, and they asked me to do the children's story, and I said yes for Christmas. She said yes for Christmas, and I was so amazed. You know, the fact is, friends, we do not have to set up great edifices for worshiping God. Is that right? We do not need to set up ziggurats and things. What we need to do is simply listen to the voice of God and be willing to invite people, come and listen to God's voice with me. Experience the healing power, the peace and tranquility that comes from following Jesus. Come and join me in my home. Just read the Bible together, pray together. The simple things of the gospel. Is that right? And you might say, well, Sven, that was a few years ago, but this is the amazing thing as well. You know, my neighbors, I've been working together with him. I found out when I first moved to Newcastle that he was a lawyer and a prosecutor. Okay, so immediately when I find that out, I'm going, look, I'm going to be very careful about what I say here. I do not want to get convicted by my words, right? But I thought, here's a guy who loves logic, loves evidence. And here's a guy who loves apologetics. So I said, I'm going to give him books about apologetics. Crazy thing to do, giving him, you know, this is why God exists. And the fact is this, is you go over to his house, give him a book, and you could tell that sort of surprise. You know, what are you doing? Have you ever had that? You know, what are you doing here? Why are you giving me this book? But, you know, over time, you know, he's come closer. And this very Christmas, we invite our neighbors over. We do it every Christmas, and we invite them over. And we're sitting there. And there his two daughters and his wife. His two daughters are very, very intelligent, very competitive as well. They're ducks of their classes all the time. And they say next year, the oldest daughter says, next year, I'm doing the equivalent of my year 13 here in New Zealand. She says, I'm going to be doing religious studies. She says, I have hardly any understanding of this. And I'm wondering, Sven, if you'd be able to help me out here in my religion. And I go over and I say to them, I take the gospel, the Christmas story, and I say, here it is. This is the Christmas story. Give this to your daughter. Have a read. Here's some questions. Here's some books as well to read. You know, my friends, the reality is this. The reality is this, is that God is calling you. He's coming into your mixed up family. Let's be honest. Coming into your mixed up family with all of the spiritual joys and the spiritual darknesses. And what he's doing is this. He says, I don't want you to get dragged down. I don't want you to identify with those things. Don't let that be your identity. Identify with me. Identify yourself with the God of the universe. You know, beyond all of those things, identify yourself with me. Listen to me. Hear my voice. And then come on a journey with me. And not a journey of ziggurats and huge big edifices. No, a simple journey of wherever you go. Invite people to join you, to experience the presence of God, to listen to his voice, to be able to hear his healing power, to experience his healing power. I want you to bless others by teaching them to recognize my presence and to listen to my voice as well. And my question for you today is this. What is your response going to be to that voice in your life today? May God bless you as you think of how you respond. Father, you know each and every one of us. You know our families. You know our history. You know our strengths, our weaknesses, our joys, our sorrows. You know it all. And yet I just want to thank you that no matter where we come from, no matter where our family is, no matter what has been in our past, you're on the move. You come into our lives and you say, identify yourself. Identify yourselves with me, you say, Jesus. Connect yourself with me. Just follow me. Listen to my voice. Go where I am going, to the land that I will show you. And Father, I just want to pray that you would build the confidence in our church here in North New Zealand. Thank you for what you've already done. Thank you for the incredible work that you've been doing. But Father, there's greater things. There's even more abundantly than all we could ask or think or imagine. And Father, I pray through your Spirit, through your revelation, through your power, that you would lead us into the future, into an amazing future, but not a future where it's about huge, big human accomplishments, Lord. Just the simple fact, the simple reality of spending time in your word, inviting people to join us in prayer and experience your healing as well. And Lord, I pray for a movement. I pray for a thriving, vibrant, dynamic movement of Seventh-day Adventist disciples and disciple makers. It's not about the church leaders and the professionals and all of that. It's about what you are calling each and one of us to be able to do in our community through your power, through your Spirit. Transform us, empower us, give us the reassurance and the comfort that we need. And Father, I just pray that just like you're on the move, that we would be able to follow you all the way into eternity. Close behind on your heels is my prayer. And I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.